Hey everyone, this is Mike Cadaver, and I just wanted to take a second to let you know about the Corpse Collective's Bloody Valentine Horror Trivia Contest. With your already deep horror movie knowledge, you'll get a chance to win a $50 gift certificate to Vinegar Syndrome. So go to app.horrorpubtrivia.com to sign up and get all the details. To be eligible now, you must be registered for app.horrorpubtrivia.com by February 14th, 2025. And the best thing about all of this, it's free.
In a future reality, I shall destroy you.
I reject your reality and I substitute my own.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 12 of Empire of the Full Moon, the show where I, Mike Cadaver, talk in depth about the films of Charles Band, whether it be Empire Pictures or Full Moon Features. This episode, I have got a treat for you, and this is one that I forgot about for a long time until I just was going through my DVDs and I saw an old copy I have of this one, and this is the Dungeonmaster from 1984, aka Rage War, The Challenges of Excalibrate and the Digital Knights, or something like that. I never heard of it. I've heard of it as Rage War and the Dungeonmaster, but not that big old long thing anyway. So for those who've seen this, what a wild one this is, and you know all about it. We'll talk about how good it actually may be, but if nothing else, it's wild. And for those of you who have not seen it yet, you guys are in for a treat. So yeah, let's get into a little bit of the background before we talk about the actual movie. So this was an all-timer. This was an old, like an early Empire Films feature in 1984, long before Full Moon was even a thing, and Empire was still kind of doing its thing, making its best movies. Some of the Empire's movies, the best were still yet to come. But in 1984, they made the Dungeonmaster, and these had so many of the people who would not only help Charles Band and work on Charles Band's stuff in the Empire era, but also in the Full Moon era as well. So let me look here. So we have Ted Nicolau, who we'll talk about the direction a little bit more, because this is, if you haven't seen it, just to give you a little hint, this is kind of an anthology. It's kind of set up as an anthology. We'll talk about the structure. So, but Ted Nicolau was one of the directors on this, and we know Ted Nicolau from the Subspecies Vampire Journal movie. In fact, we just talked about one of his movies from the last few years with Subspecies 5, Blood Rise, on this show. He did TerrorVision from 1986. Yeah, so it also it involved Debbie Dion as a producer, and Debbie Dion was a former assistant to the casting director of Parasite. But that's how she was in the beginning, but by the end she had been married to Charles Band, and they are no longer together, as you know that, and it's a very sad. And Charles Band, if you'll go read the book, I know I bring this book up every time, and I should always have it right here so I can show you that I have it, but I've proven that many times again. But Charles Band had quite an illustrious turnstile of women in his career, and Debbie Dion was one of the ones that ended up really helping him out with the film side of things. The music was Richard Band, and of course we know Richard Band, Charles's brother, who worked on so many movies for Charles Band, whether it be Empire and Full Moon Features. The thing is this is something I've wanted to talk about before, and maybe I was thinking when we do a show just about Richard Band, but he adds so much to all of the movies he does, and he does add a lot and does a great job. Also, just so you know, before I forget, Shirley Walker also got a credit for the music on this. But I just wanted to liken the music, and this is kind of an aside, and I hate to get too off track because I think it's going to be a long episode, even though it's a pretty short movie. I think people who score films of all kinds, right? They're kind of like the offensive linemen of filmmaking, because you can love them, and you can see them do well and be awesome. But the main time while you're watching the movie that you notice them is if something is weird or bad. So, like I said, I liken that to an offensive lineman for those of you who are into football. Anyway, Peter Mnuchin was a director on this, has worked a lot with the second unit directors with Empire of Full Moon. David Allen wrote and directed one of the segments, and of course we know David Allen, basically anytime there was any kind of stop motion animation in any of these movies, David Allen was the guy putting it together, and he was amazing, and he has his own little segment here, which is awesome. And the stop motion animation is clearly top notch and clearly done by him, because I don't know too many, but the only two ones that I know is this David Allen and, of course, the godfather of all stop motion. Anyway, this original story in the wraparound was directed and written by Charles Band. Charles Band produced this movie, and so quite the team there. It was filmed in 1983, but it wasn't released until 84. It's weird because on a couple of places it looks like it debuted in Cannes on May 14th, 1984, and in, it says Salt Lake City, but I assume it was Sundance, which is in Park City, Utah. I would know. I mean, I'm from here. But on the 24th of 1984, I couldn't really figure out and find any official places online where it stated that, but so don't hold me to that, but that's where it is. Anyways, why don't we do this? It's about time we get talking about the movie. So here's a trailer real quick, and we'll get right back to talk about The Dungeonmaster from 1984.
He is a warrior in a wasteland without mercy.
It's the little guy.
He has survived where countless others have died.
Good shot, huh?
He has destroyed all that would kill
Out of
him.
control!
He is the only one who can face the challenges of the Dungeon Master.
You are a worthy opponent.
I don't believe this.
I dub thee Excalibrates.
Discover the secret of the Statue of Stone. The ungodly demons of the dead. The trap of rat spit, the slime ball.
I am Ratsmith, caretaker of the dead.
The ordeal of the ice monsters of doom.
My legs are frozen. I can't move my feet.
The attack of the samurai sentinel. The treachery of the monster of good and evil. A warrior trapped in a timeless void, locked in mortal combat against the overlord to the agonies of strange beasts and lost souls.
Prepare for the end.
The Dungeon Master. Rated PG-13.
All right, The Dungeonmaster from 1984, currently on IMDb. This has a 4.6. We'll get into usually this is the part where I talk about the writer and the director, but since it was kind of an anthology, well, since it was definitely an anthology, I'll get into that as we go, because I'm going to talk briefly about every one of the vignettes and kind of how they all fit together. And it's actually kind of brilliant, but who knows if the execution is brilliant, but we will talk about that. I'll talk about some of the main characters, though, because there's a lot of actors in this. But we had Byron as Paul Rogers. We had Leslie Wing as Gwen Rogers. And Richard Mall is Mestema. Probably most famous, at least for us old guys, as being the lovable court bailiff in Night Court, Bull Shannon. But this is actually not his first go-round with Charles Band and Empire, actually, because he played Hurok in Metal Storm, right? He was also in one of my favorite movies with Clint Howard called Evil Speak, and if you haven't seen that one, I don't think it's a movie that can be talked about on this show, but I love that so much. Just go see that if you haven't already. Anyway, so he was on Metal Storm. The problem is dude is 6'8", right? And he's supposed to be playing like this big old like king of a nomadic tribe of warriors in the future, kind of Mad Max style, right? He's 6'8", but it's funny because Charles Band's like, listen, brother, we need you to shave your head. He's like, well, I can't. He had this beautiful long black hair, which he has in this movie, playing Mestema. And but they talked him into it. They gave him an extra $500. Richard Mole's like, for $500 extra bucks, I'll do it. But it is pilot seasons, and I'm going to go try out for a couple of pilots. So hopefully it doesn't ruin my chances. Well, it turns out he did try out for Night Court that year, and he got the job basically the whole time he was there. He had a shaved head. So I just thought that was kind of a funny thing. All right, so let's go over the plot. Let me start by explaining kind of the structure of this movie. It starts like any other movie. We have Paul Bradford, a computer engineer that has a great life. He's a genius computer guy, both software and hardware. And he's come up with a couple of genius inventions, one being the X-Cali BR8, or X-Calibrate, which he will be called later on in the movie, which is a personal computer with a pretty advanced AI operating system, especially for 1984. He's got a hot girlfriend who he intends to marry one day, hopefully sooner than later. Well, one day as they're lying peacefully asleep in their bed, they are transported to a hell realm where an evil wizard, Mestema, Richard Mole, wants to challenge Paul. You see, he sees Paul as a worthy opponent to challenge his powerful magic, because Paul has harnessed technological power. Mestema puts Paul through a series of 7 trials in the style of Hercules. If he's successful, he'll have one last battle with Mestema for his freedom. Now, I'm going to talk about all the trials in a minute, but I want to take one quick minute to talk to you about something that I find hilarious. Now, in the beginning of this plot synopsis, I mentioned that it started like any other movie, then I just kind of went on to talk about Paul and his life and stuff like that. Well, that's not exactly true, because before the credits, the opening credit sequence, the title sequence, and mind you, this movie is rated PG-13, but in the opening scene, Paul, who is dreaming, wakes up in some kind of laboratory where he's hooked up to a machine. He finds a gorgeous woman. She's leading him away, so he follows her, and she ends up leading him to a weird bunker and into a bed, then proceeds to get fully naked in a PG-13 movie. Like, we're talking full-on frontal Furburger, the whole deal. 2 minutes and 44 seconds into this movie, and it was wild. Anyways, he's about to get on it with a bunch of alien zombie guys, break through a submarine door and take her away. But, I hate it when that happens, when I'm having that dream. But does it have anything to do with the movie? Not really, unless it's to set the stage for the movie just being a vehicle for 7 up-and-coming writers/directors to add their stories to the movie. However, I'm going to guess that maybe that was it, and maybe we should just get used to little stories that are bite-sized. But I don't know. I just think this was a cool little way to do some exploitation and make the movie a little bit more exciting in the beginning. Anyways, I mentioned that this movie is a vehicle for 7 writer-directors to showcase their talents. Each of the 7 challenges that Paul has to overcome is basically one of the short stories that one of these writer-directors created. Has about 72 minutes of story. It's longer than that because they have like a post-credits, or not a post-credit, but like a post, when the movie's over, basically, they do some flashbacks and post some information about the titles of each of the vignettes and who directed, stuff like that. But up until the point when the story ends, it's about 72 minutes. There are 7 full vignettes plus a wraparound story. So these are only a few minutes long a piece. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of like going to a concert maybe, and if you don't like a song that's playing, just wait a couple minutes and everything will be fine, because you will have a brand new song. All right, so let's start to talk about the wraparound. It was written and directed by Charles Band, and it takes place in a limbo type of hell dimension. Mestema's domain is what I will call it. Dark skies, dark, dry lake bed, fire spewing from the cracks. Gwen is chained to a rock, and Mestema looks down upon Paul from his perch on the rock. And these are great. And Richard Mole is absolutely amazing in all of this. He exudes his darkest, most melodramatic evil of all time. He's got his Wishmaster voice. I am the ultimate evil. He's 6'8" guy in a full-on vampire cloak with his long black hair, chewing up the scenery and relishing his own level of evil as he says all these funny, awesome things that you would assume that evil hell guys would say. Anyways, first of all, so basically what happens is from that limbo type place, Paul gets sent to a bunch of different places in other dimensions, supposedly, and these are each of the vignettes, and there's just a little, maybe a couple of minute long limbo scene in between each of them. But let's get into the vignettes. First one's called Ice Gallery. It was written and directed by Rosemary Turco. Paul and Gwen are transported to an ice cave where many evil people from history are frozen. And just as Gwen starts to freeze up, Mestema asks if he should warm it up, which thaws the evil dudes, except for some reason Einstein's there and he happens to be holding the key to be able to escape that. The evil dudes start attacking her and Paul must overcome it. The second of the hell dimensions that he's sent to, the second task, is called Demons of the Dead, which is crazy. It was written and directed by John Carl Buechler, which we all know for all of his special effects and even his directorial in Friday the 13th. He was even in, worked some of the Hatchet series with Adam Green, all that stuff. But Paul shows up in this hellish cavern full of zombie things, and it's an awesome set and makeup until, of course, we find the master of this realm, who's an evil rubber puppet goblet thing. And he sits there and talks to Paul about, and they engage in a battle of wits. And does Paul escape? Well, probably, since he goes to the next one. Now, probably my favorite, and it's for obvious reasons, is one called Heavy Metal. It was written and directed by Charles Band. Blackie Lawless, Chris Holmes and company are playing a dive bar show. And they have Gwen tied up at the back of the stage and plan on using her as some kind of sacrifice to metal, I guess. Much of this vignette is actually just Wasp playing Tormentor, which is amazing. Oh my gosh, I love Wasp so much, and so that's why. Anyways, one of the reasons I'm such a huge Wasp fan is because of Blackie Lawless. He's always chewing up the scenery. He's always being wild and crazy and so theatrical, and he's great in this one as well. But the bottom line is Paul must save Gwen. And so that's basically all about that one. The next one is called Stone Canyon Giant, written and directed by Dave Allen, and Sal and Phil Fondacaro play a couple of dwarf natives in a land where they must give tribute to a giant stone, giant, I guess, who sits atop his throne in the temple. They steal Paul's computer gauntlet in tribute, because that's kind of Paul's thing. I didn't mention that he has this gauntlet on his hand that shoots lasers, which basically is how he wins all of the contests. But when Paul takes it back, the stone giant animates to try to get the tribute back from him. Paul must survive. The best part of this is that when Paul's running from this huge stop-motion animated stone giant, he's running and hiding and do his best. And if running and doing that for trying to survive against a giant wasn't enough, the dwarves start dropping rocks of their own on him. What a couple of dicks. But anyways, between these vignettes, Mestema tempts Paul with riches and hot chicks. And if my girlfriend was chained up to a wall and saw a bunch of treasure and hot chicks being offered, she'd be sweating. Jokes, trust me, honey, I would choose you in a second. The next vignette was Slasher, written by Jeffrey Byron and directed by Steve Ford. Paul sent back to a big city where a serial killer is on the loose. The killer has Gwen in his sights, but Paul must overcome the cops and solve the mystery as to when the murder will take place and save Gwen from the illustrious Slasher. Oh man, it's bad. But there was one part in where I thought it was so funny, because Paul's talking to the computer and he's like, okay, the computer's like, there's a couple of places where this could be, and these are the most likely places using the AI. And Paul's like, oh, it's probably at this one, which is 1.1 miles away. And the computer says, oh, there's a 5-minute ETA on that. My brother, are you an Olympic athlete? Probably, because he makes it. Anyways, we got The Cave Beast, written and directed by Peter Manoogian, probably the most confusing of them all. He's transported into the mouth of a cave where he hears Gwen's voice from inside. He goes there and he finds a little ghoulie down there, not the ghoulies from bands and movies, but a ghoulie from part 4 where they're dwarves in masks and costumes. This cave has thermonuclear activity in an unstable structure. The Cave Beast is a weird one because it's basically just one little small guy in a cave that can fall apart real easy, and you have to figure out what happened because it's a kind of a tough one. And finally, we have Desert Pursuit, which is written and directed by Ted Nicolau. This is the last one of the vignettes. Basically a low-rent Mad Max. They're teleported on an airplane, like an airplane graveyard, my goodness, in the desert, where they drive around in desert vehicles. Actually, the same cars from Metal Storm, and they just repainted them, and they have to basically overcome the threat from the locals. This is just a bunch of dudes shooting lasers at each other from Mad Max vehicles. And like I said, this whole movie's about shooting lasers. It's like most of the solutions to escaping the scenarios is shooting something with a laser out of your gauntlet. And it didn't seem like many of the trials were super hard in the stories. All of them were really thin, but it looked great. Now, I love this movie. Like, I really, really love this movie. I've I haven't like watched it in a long time, but like I said, I put this on the old DVD. In fact, it was an old Scream Factory DVD that had 4 movies on it, I believe, and one of the other ones was Cellar Dweller, and I think one of them was Catacombs, which we've done on this show. I can't remember the last one, but it was like a 4-pack up all night horror movie type of thing, and I just found that DVD and I watched it. It was, yeah, I love this one, and obviously I chose to do this next on the show because it was such a fun ride for me. But I'm not going to tell you it's a good movie. In fact, most of these vignettes don't really go anywhere. They don't. I mean, they're really short. Like I said, I mean, they have to fit 7 vignettes in a wraparound in 72 minutes. So it's not like you have a lot of time to fill up with a great story or anything like that. But they do a decent enough job. And I feel like, to be honest with you, that these are all up-and-comers making these at the time, I assume. I mean, obviously, they're not all exactly at the same place in their careers, but they're all pretty new. It is 1984. And I wonder if this was meant more for kind of an illustration or a showcase of their talents, whether it be Buechler in his creature creation, some of the makeup stuff, and just kind of gave a lot of people just a little bit of time to showcase what they can do. And, kind of maybe show it off. But I'm not really sure. A lot of these guys went, obviously, to do a lot more films, whether it be directing or in other parts of filmmaking. But a couple of them didn't. So, I mean, who knows? Anyway, if you look at it like that, then it's great, But if you want some epic, like, story, it's just not happening. The story is so thin, and it's so silly, and it's just fun. And I watch a lot of crappy movies, and my wife even tells me, it's like, how do you watch these and laugh when to me they're just so boring? I'm like, well, that's because you suck, basically. Just kidding, she doesn't suck. But long story short, it's not a great movie, but it is a fun one. Definitely go check it out. And I did find one thing out after I was doing some research about this. The reason this got a PG-13 rating is because when this was released in 1985 on VHS via Lightning Video, the pre-opening sequence was cut. And now there's a couple of times that you can see like female nipplage through clothing, but it's not very clear, not nearly as clear and as obvious as in that first scene. So that was cut off. That whole first scene was cut off. And there's only a couple of mild, like really very mild scenes after that. The funny thing is you go to Prime right now, it still says PG-13. It has that whole first scene in it, and it's just, so don't let your children watch it. Let your children watch it if you're weird. I don't care. I'm not telling you what to do. Anyway, you can watch this on Prime Video, Apple TV, Fubo, MGM Plus, and that's really all I have to say about this movie. I love it. Go watch it. I cannot tell you it's going to be amazing, like I said, but do it. So do me a favor. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, to this channel, there'll be a lot of stuff. I like doing this show quite a bit, so it'll, especially at least for a little while, it'll be a lot of this show. But I just did write a trivia app, and go to app.horrorpubtrivia.com. I did a commercial for that early on because you have about a week to sign up. So hopefully you can get that and win yourself a Vinegar Syndrome gift certificate. Go to corpsecollective.com. Click around there for a while, see a bunch of the other stuff that I'm busy doing. And if you ever want to add your reviews or videos or anything like that, let me know. But until next time, I'm Mike Cadaver, and I'll catch you later.